This conversation was sparked. We had a mutual friend that I was talking about that was looking at our traffic and had said that Neil's traffic was down and my traffic was up 20%. And then funny enough, that wasn't exactly the case. And so we want to spend this episode to talk about the accuracy of these, also because Neil happens to have an SEO tool. So you want to go first, Neil?
Yeah, so I know that where a lot of these people buy their data from, because we buy data from similar sources, or if not actually the same sources. People all have their own formulas, but here's the thing with SEO traffic and just traffic in general from these tools. Some people are going to say, oh, it's down. Some tools are going to say it's up. These tools aren't 100% perfect. Does that mean that you shouldn't use them? No, I think they're valuable because they can show you things like keyword gaps. They can show you things like where to get link opportunities from. They can show you your traffic compared to the competition. And when you look at it, you can compare apples to apples. Even if your Google Analytics says you're up 30%, if these tools say you're only up 5% and your competition's up 10%, chances are they're using a similar formula for the competition as well. So if you're up 30%, really, your competition's up probably more than that. And you should use them as a barometer of how you're doing versus the competition, but you shouldn't use it as an end all be all. It can give you a lot of great insights. It can tell you what you should be focusing on, what's wrong with your site, but don't just assume that when you're looking at a brand new site and let's say you're trying to buy that website or go into a new vertical, be like, oh, this is their traffic. If I start one, I can get this much traffic. All the traffic metrics for all these tools, they're not accurate. No one has 100% accurate data.
Yeah, how I generally like to use these tools is I look at the trend line, so you can look at it from a comparison standpoint, kind of go from there, right? But it's never apples to apples. I will say though, SimilarWeb has gotten pretty damn good with their numbers. To Neil's
Dude, they're
point,
still off. We did for a fun shits and giggles exercise. We typed in, I think it was like almost 500 URLs that we actually need the traffic to, and it's all over the place. They're all
500
really off.
URLs.
Uh-huh.
This is a
It
whole
was a
nother
little bit under
this is a
that.
whole nother episode that we should do this on. Okay, so Neil says that I found it. I've only his sample size is 500. My sample size is like 4. He has a better sample size, which we'll talk about in another episode here. But
But
I,
it's still a good apples to apples comparisons, right?
well, my point is like we started this conversation because like it wasn't accurate to begin with. So I thought SimilarWeb had gotten better, but apparently not.
No. It is actually one of the better ones out there. I'm just saying it's not accurate compared to your real traffic. Like if you look
Yep.
at Google Analytics.
Yep. Or webmaster tools. So point is you should rely on your webmaster tools. You should rely on your GA. From there, most importantly, you should rely on the revenue that you're driving from your site. So
Yes. Who cares if your traffic is up 20% if your revenue isn't even up 1%, right? Like if your traffic is down 10%, your revenue went up 20%. Good for you. Dude, even you and I were talking earlier, your overall traffic is down this year, but your
yep.
revenue is up.
Yep.
Because it's like, yeah, traffic doesn't mean you're necessarily going to make more revenue. A lot of that traffic is irrelevant in the first place.
Yep. This was a report done by SEMrush or SEMrush, however you want to define it. And based on the data that they picked up, they saw that more and more clicks are moving to zero click. And Neil, what is zero click exactly?
Zero click is someone ends up doing a search on Google and they don't click anything. A great example of this is if you type in, let's say, Las Vegas weather or Los Angeles weather. So whatever city you're going to or live in, if you type that in plus weather, you'll see the weather. Google shows it to you typically for that day plus the next 6 days. So a total of 7-day forecast. And you usually don't click through on to any website. The same goes if you just ask Google, what's 2 plus 2? It'll tell you that the answer is 4. You don't need to click a website to figure out that the answer is 4.
Yep. So basically what we want to talk about is what you can do to kind of counteract against this. So Neil and I will go back and forth here. The first thing I'll kick it off with is actually looking for long tail keywords. So I know a lot of people try to optimize for, let's say, shoes. So instead of trying to optimize for the keyword shoes, you can optimize for men's running shoes or women's dress shoes. Maybe you can put a color in there. The reason I'm saying this is because long tail SERPs are less likely to have zero click features. That doesn't mean they'll never have them. Sometimes they will, but you want to basically, look for where there's less competition, right? And you can do this using certain tools out there. Neil, I don't know if Ubersuggest does this, but I can speak to SEMrush and Ahrefs. They do have abilities where you can see kind of the features on a very specific SERP. You just need to type in that keyword. So
Exactly. Yeah, we show you rich snippets. And then the other thing that I would end up doing is focusing on question-based keywords. So if you look at Quora, top 1,000, top 100, not 1,000, top 100 website in the world according to SimilarWeb. And the way Quora gets the traffic is they just answer questions such as, how hard is it to be Olympian? Or what is the training regimen like to be in the Olympics? How hard is it to be a college professor? How hard is it to get into Stanford? Now, depending on the industry you're in, you want to answer questions that are related to your industry, but it's an easy way to get a lot of traffic and people tend to click through. Now, sometimes Google will pull some of the answers into the SERP, so you may not always get clicks, but a lot of times people will go through to your website and dig deeper, because for a lot of questions, the answer isn't a simple one sentence or a one word thing. It is much more complex than that.
So point number 2 from me, go ahead.
And these terms aren't that competitive, so they're easy to rank for. Hence, Quora gets so much traffic.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, we're kind of building on a long-term piece, the long tail piece right now. But my second point is on avoiding the zero-click searches altogether. So if you use any of these tools, Ubersuggest, Ahrefs, SEMrush, what you can do is just show the features that don't show the zero click, or sorry, the zero click results, or the featured snippets, I should say. Go for the blue ocean instead of the red ocean. I'll add on one more on top of that. If you're going to try to avoid the zero click searches, I would say at a higher level, think about taking it to a higher level, not just focusing all your eggs in one basket on SEO, but diversifying your traffic sources altogether, right? So let's say you're doing pretty well with SEO, but you find that you're capping out. Where is the arbitrage? So is the arbitrage on LinkedIn or Twitter, on YouTube, or short form video? You have good organic reach on all of those, right? It's just a matter of where is your audience hanging out, and can you go diversify your traffic sources there? And ideally you focus on a couple, maybe one or two, get them going really well, and then scale out to the other ones.
The other thing I would do is focus on building a brand. A great way to do that is be everywhere. Eric talked about omni-channel, but when someone sees or interacts with your brand 7 times, they're much more likely to evangelize it, remember it, talk to other people about it. You build a great brand by creating amazing content, building a great product, building a great service, building a community, participating, replying to comments. These are all things that can help build a brand. It also takes many, many years. Even if it's a personal brand, you speak at a few conferences, it's not going to help that much. But if you do a conference a month for 5 years, you'll really notice that your brand will start taking off. The point I'm getting at is build a brand. If you look at terms like Nike, it's searched roughly 6 times more in the United States in the term shoes. That just shows you the popularity of a brand. And if you build a brand, people will come directly to you. You don't have to worry as much about zero clicks, and you don't have to worry as much about algorithms as well.
Cool. Last thing from my side, building on top of building a brand, is building a community. So building a brand sometimes can be seen as building an audience. So an audience is just, imagine like one or two speaking to many people, or a group of people speaking to many. But a community is, if you look at it as like a graph, or like a group of dots, you have people talking to each other, right? And so once you build an audience, you can think about building a community. And what that means is you can have virtual events, you can have live events where you have like-minded people hanging out. It can be a small group, it can be a big group, but these are where people build relationships. And it's also a very nice retention mechanism, and it gets people talking, gets people coming back at the end of the day, because, well, that's where serendipity happens. Number 1 is the 2 most important factors when it comes to SEO: good content and links. They still matter. Links maybe to a lesser extent, but I still think they're really important. But if you can't produce the best content possible, then what are you doing, right? Back in the early days when I first started doing SEO, I would try a lot of these gray hat things. I would try these article spinners. I would try all these things just to try to get the traffic, right? And I would repeatedly get torched over and over. And then I realized over time, it's just easier to work harder, create something that's actually good, and then build from the ground up. And then over time, I started to compound, and it's been the same deal with Neil.
Yeah, number 2, keep your content up to date. There's so much content that Google has to choose from indexing. Yes, quality content does matter, but you'll find that if you just update your content more frequently, like monthly, your rankings maintain better, and they actually go up quite a bit better as well. And that's been working for a while now, for the last few years, and it'll continue to work like that in the future. Just look at Wikipedia. That's one of the reasons they rank so well.
Number 3, speaking of Wikipedia, your internal links still matter. And so the stronger your website, the more important it is to have a good site structure. And then, using breadcrumbs and things like that, or, this post is also related to these posts, or like if you're e-commerce, it's like this product is also related to, or these people also bought. You're making it easier for these crawlers to kind of crawl your entire website. So some people say like the concept of crawl budget is fake, but like, there's only so many resources that a search engine is going to spare on your website, right? And so the easier you make it for them to kind of, look through your stuff, the better, right? And so we've seen a lot of good examples of people leveraging the power of internal links. And so, kind of external backlinks from other websites, that's important, but internal links, you have to guide the direction for these search engines.
Number 4, content pruning. I know a lot of this tips that we're giving around content is because, search engines love content. When it comes to content, everyone thinks that more is better. That's not necessarily the case. If you prune and you start having less content, you'll find that it's easier to get higher rankings. There's a lot of junk on most sites. The older they get, the more junk you're going to have. There's a lot of pages that get literally 1, 2, 0 visitors, or a lot of pages on similar topics that should be combined. So either prune or combine your content. There's a great case study from about.com when they did this, how their traffic exploded. They ended up changing the domains into multiple different sites, but check out that case study. You can find it on the web. And that's a great example of what you can continually do to keep getting more traffic.
For number 5, if you look at some of the top content out there, let's use like a G2, for example, because it's a comparison site, right? So what tends to work really for almost any industry is, trends, statistics, right? So that's more top of the funnel. Trend statistics, those tend to do well. But also if you're kind of lower funnel, it's like alternatives or versus content or, best software or best agency. That type of stuff tends to do really well. And what's to say that you can't rank for that, right? And so I think it's understanding, what works in your niche, but also understanding what humans tend to search for. And then once you do that, then you kind of just rinse and repeat across the board. And one bonus I'll give you is translation, but not necessarily everyone should do that. So I remember when I was working in an organization, we had like 300 or 400 people or so, and I was their SEO strategist. So I think I was like 24 years old or something like that. I realized at that point, because I'd worked in agencies, middle-sized agencies, right? Came into this company, and I realized, oh crap, there's actually politics. Like as an SEO, I was expecting that I could just get things done. Like I want these changes done. I want these, title changes. I want these templates, to roll out to the entire website. I want to write a script. I want to like have all these changes done, right? The problem with that is I found myself actually sitting in product meetings and I was on the bottom of the totem pole. Like people looked down on me as the SEO and they didn't really respect like what I was saying, right? I was like, oh crap, like what's the angle for me to get things done? Otherwise I'm going to get fired, right? And so in this episode, we want to talk about what you can do to actually get SEO buy-in so you can actually drive impact so you don't get fired.
The first thing that I've seen, I've never really worked in an organization like Eric has, but I've been on the consulting end and we've gotten hit up by so many people who are in organizations that are like, I know we need to do SEO, but we don't have budgets. It doesn't matter if the economy is good or bad. And they're just like, man, I can't get my boss to give me the budget for it. The first thing that's been super effective is to try to show what your competition is doing from an SEO standpoint, because a lot of companies do paid advertising. They understand cost per click. If you end up breaking down what your competition is doing from a traffic standpoint, from an SEO perspective, and a lot of the tools out there can show you that, and then you can estimate what the cost per click is, and you can end up showing how much traffic they're getting and what it roughly costs. And then you can end up using an average conversion rate. You can take paid data and you can take your conversion rate on paid data and maybe drop it down to like half or a fourth to just be more conservative. Because keep in mind, to rank on SEO, you need more content and other things on your pages to rank higher. So in many cases, the conversion rate is going to be lower than if you have a paid advertising landing page that's very specific with very little content. And what we've seen is when you end up showing them these numbers and you're like, look, here's how profitable this is, and this is what it can do to our numbers this year or for overall budgets, it actually gets people really excited. And if you can actually find real case studies, not just doing back the napkin math, but if you can actually find real case studies from other people within your industry, breaking down the results that they've gotten and the ROI from it, then it really helps. And you can end up finding a lot of these case studies on agency websites.
Yep. What Neil's really saying is for most SEOs, and I'll say I was guilty of this in my early career, I wasn't really thinking about the ROI. I was just thinking about traffic, right? But if you break it down and say, hey, if we put in X, so if we invest X and we will get Y in return, so ideally you tie it to dollars. So hopefully you can tie your traffic in, understand what your conversion rate is and understand kind of what the value per visitor is. Then you can map out what ROI you're actually going to get. And then if you're able to break it down to your leader, or hopefully it's like a senior leader in the company, they're gonna be like, oh my God, this SEO actually understands business results. They understand how to talk in business terms. Don't just talk like a marketer, talk in business terms, right? And that's going to help you go a long way. Because I remember I got so frustrated that I actually went up to talk to one of the senior VPs of the company, so super high up, right? I think I remember even interacting with the CEO at some point. I was like, hey, like I have a lot of things that can drive like a big return. Like, what do I need to do here? Because I'm not able to push these things through. And he's like, okay, what you need to spec out when you're talking to like a team is like, hey, this is what we're going to put in, what resources are needed, who needs to be involved, how long is it going to take, and also what the success actually look like, right? And if you're able to break it out like that for not even just like SEO related stuff, but any related stuff, then you're going to be able to be diplomatic about the case that you're making, right? And not just try to just bulldoze your case through. Because for Neil and I, like now that we've had our own businesses for a while, it's easy for us to just push things through. Maybe not as much anymore. I think before it's just like a quick change, right? I know Neil now, when he runs experiments on his site, sometimes it might take 2 weeks, but usually we would like to get things done like the next day. But it's not realistic in an organization because you have other stakeholders and you have to figure out how to play, the game basically.
Yeah, as Eric mentioned, you got to make a business case. If you're not making a business case, you're not going to end up winning this battle. But look, the other thing too is if you don't have budget for SEO, it doesn't mean that you can't do SEO either. So for example, if your organization says, hey, we don't have money to spend on SEO, we're not going to invest in this. One thing that I would do is set up my analytics within the organization correctly to actually track the ROI from different channels. And I would start showing them the conversions that we're getting currently from SEO, because you're already ranking for some keywords, or you should be, because we're talking about large organizations here. And if they see the ROI that they're already getting from organic, they'll be like, huh, we're already making X thousands or millions of dollars from this. Why wouldn't we invest more? And keep in mind, a lot of organic ROI comes from brand queries. Brand queries meaning, what is your brand name or your company name that people are searching for? So you should exclude those and make that apparent in your report. And then you can end up saying, hey, just from organic traffic, from our rankings, for terms that aren't related to our brand name, this is what we're producing and this is the ROI. From there, it's much, much easier to go and get more money for it, because at that point, it's just logic. It's not really emotions anymore.
Yeah, the final thing I'll say from my side is it's really constant education, especially if you have a boss that doesn't really understand this stuff. Doing it one time is not enough. I would recommend each week or maybe every 2 weeks or so, you're making a Loom video. So that's LOOM, and just kind of make a 5-minute screencast saying, hey, this is kind of what we're seeing from organic traffic right now. And then if we do this and this, I think this is going to happen. What can we do to make this happen? Like I have a crawl, walk, run approach. So come point out the problem, but then offer a solution as well. And then offer to solve the solution. Most people can't even get to the first part. Most people in large organizations can't even point out the problem, right? If you can do all three, guaranteed you will get promoted and guaranteed that you will get everything that you need in your career.
So, what most people think with SEO is like, what hacks can we end up doing? How do we optimize title tags, meta tags, click-through rate, all this kind of stuff, write more content? But here's the biggest thing that people miss. If you look at your analytics or even your Google Search Console and you look at your traffic year over year, you probably have a lot of pages that were getting traffic that just decline. Why is that? It's because they're just not updated. Look, for the term auto insurance, I was using this example the other day. In the month of January, there's roughly 300,000 searches in the United States, 1.4 billion articles. There's just way more content than the amount of searchers. Like if you just do that rough math, right? 1.4 billion, 300,000 searchers, you're looking at, you have roughly 4,600 articles per searcher. That's way too many. So the issue isn't content. The issue is this fresh, updated content. My team spends the majority of their time updating my old content than they do focusing on new content. I write no more than one piece of article a week, sometimes only one every other week. My team spends the majority of their time updating the content. That's what's driving traffic. Search for anything on the internet, you see Wikipedia. Why? Because their content's fresh and up to date. That's the only way to really dominate SERPs in 2023 is just to constantly keep your content updated.
we created this topic and Neil and I didn't sync or anything beforehand, but I was literally going to say the same thing. And so I'm going to give you some practical tips on what you can do here. You can look at pages that are losing traffic over time. There are, decay tools out there that you can certainly use, or you can just kind of monitor, star the pages in your analytics and just look at them over time. But I like you can use Ubersuggest for this. In this case, I'm going to talk about Hrefs. And Hrefs has a section where you can open it up, click on organic keywords, and then you can look at you can sort by pages that have lost their rankings, right, over let's say the last year or so. And then you can work off of those. Ideally, you're kind of cross-referencing this with pages that have where you have conversion data, right? So what I would do, and this is a little more complex, you're going to have to, perhaps YouTube this a little bit more, but once you have this export of this report, you can export it out. And then you can also export a report from your Google Analytics, because then it will show your actual conversions. And then what you can do is you can use a VLOOKUP and then cross-reference, and then you can prioritize which pages you want to upgrade more. That's going to take a little more time, but I believe with a lot of the AI tools that are coming out, there's a tool called adept.ai where there's a waitlist right now where you can literally tell it what to do in, like let's say HubSpot or Salesforce or Excel. In this case, you'd be using Excel. And so that way you can stay on top of this, because especially with the English language, Google is pretty good at indexing a lot of stuff, but it's just such a large index now. And a lot of the stuff, there's always new stuff coming out, but like a lot of stuff just needs to be upgraded. And I think people haven't really built that muscle as much as they could have by now.
Yeah, dude, I totally agree with that. By the way, have you ever, I don't know when it was, but HubSpot published an article on how many people they have in their content team where they talked about it. This was years and years ago, but they have a massive team that just spends time on updating content.
Yeah, I think it's like 20.
It's something ridiculous.
And that was from 2 years ago, so it has to be higher than that now.
Yeah, and what we found is just having a ton of people, like an army of people, just focusing on updating content, like it just increases your traffic. It's one of the best things that we've done.
Let me ask you this, Neil, on a percentage basis, because I'm curious on the net new content that you're creating right now. What percentage is dedicated to updating versus creating new stuff? So I should just say,
more than 90% is updating.
Probably that's a lot.
Like 95.
That's a lot. We're like 60, 70%, I believe. So sure, there's always going to be new trends and things like that, but you're going to be competing with the news sites. And I don't know if you necessarily want to be a news site. Neil and I, we focus more on kind of the evergreen long form stuff. That's just what works for us. So your mileage may vary. The last thing I'll add from our side is you can use Neil's tool, Answer to Public, that will help you kind of come up with things to upgrade within the content. You can also just use Google search and search for a keyword and then look at what other, people also search for. You can look at those queries, and then you can use a tool called Keyword Cupid, and that will help you kind of cluster the keywords together. So there's a lot of tools that you can use here, but again, your mileage may vary. I think at the highest level though, if I had to just say one thing, it's upgrading at the end of the day. And that's what's really helped us. I remember there's one post we had that was only getting like 2,000 visits a month. And like every maybe 2 months or so, we'd add like a paragraph to that page. And then that page is now getting 30 or 40,000 visits a month. So that stuff adds up. Neil, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Just make sure you spend time updating content. We can't emphasize it enough. If you think about what Eric and I do, we spend the majority of the time updating versus creating anything new. So that should give you an idea of where you should be allocating your content creation time, assuming your blog and your website isn't new.
Number one, we actually talked about this recently, a couple episodes ago, but it is on upgrading your content. So you can use tools to crawl your website. You can use Screaming Frog. You can use the Href site audit tool. You can use, I believe, Ubersuggest, you probably have an audit tool as well. But the whole idea here is that you are looking at, maybe rankings that are dropping, traffic where it's going down on pages that ideally have high conversions on them. And then you're kind of prioritizing there, and then you're upgrading, meaning that you could be updating content. You could be removing some content. You want to make sure that ultimately you're creating the best experience possible. The vast majority of people focus too much on creating new content when the new trend is actually on updating your content for established websites.
Number 2 is data and analytics. Eric, let me ask you a question. You've been in SEO for a long time. Have you noticed in many cases your traffic goes up, and what happens to your sales or your leads or your conversions?
Goes down.
Or nothing really happens, right? So traffic doesn't always mean more revenue or conversions. And the main reason for that is people aren't really looking at the data. Not all traffic is equivalent. Like we used to rank for, I think the term was Discord on page 1. And it's like, cool, we don't really offer anything related to Discord. Sure, we help some companies with their community management, but it's not a core offering for our company. It's just like, Yeah, traffic's great, but if it's not converting, who cares? Yes, there's conversion optimization, there's other things you can do, but more visitors doesn't necessarily mean more revenue, more sales, more leads. What you need to do is be very data driven. What articles are creating leads or sales? The best type of customers? How do you get more of that kind of traffic? What are those keywords? Why are those people more likely to convert? Why are those other keywords not doing well? Because if you're generating traffic from keywords that are irrelevant, keep in mind you're spending time creating content around those keywords and building links. So it's a waste of time, which means waste of money, waste of time. That's inefficient for a business. If you want to do really well in SEO, you really need to dive into the data, the numbers, the analytics, and be data driven, and don't just look at time on site and bounce rate and, oh, my visit count's going up and my page view per visitor is going up. It's like, if it's not really impacting the bottom line, it doesn't matter.
Yep. Number 3. So SEO also means collaboration, right? And so to me, especially when a site's getting a lot of traffic, SEO and CRO kind of become merged together. Or if someone else is handling CRO or conversion rate optimization, you have to be collaborating with them, right? Or also SEOs collaborating with content marketing. So I remember when I used to work at a company, we had a couple of properties that were getting millions of visits a month. And I sat in on product meetings, and we had our content marketing people in there, we had our product people in there, and we had our CRO people in there. And I was giving my thoughts. And, I remember that the product people would kind of, look down on the SEOs, but ultimately, like, it was a good collaboration. We figured out how to prioritize and work together and ultimately drive, more. In our case, it was actually driving more views was beneficial to the bottom line of the business because it's an advertising business, but that's not the case for most people.
Number 4, creativity. I love using this example. If you ever Google auto insurance, at least in the United States, there's 1.45 billion results currently as I'm doing this search, and 301,000 searches for this month, which means there's roughly 4,817 articles for each person searching for that month. That's a lot of content to choose from. The issue these days is people just keep creating the same content over and over and over and over again. In other words, they're just regurgitating. If you can't say something new, this point, the web is already pretty saturated. Don't create the same just regurgitated content. Just don't even waste your time creating content. Go find something new to do, or don't waste your time. And the reason I think this is important is people believe that if you're using AI copywriters or spinners or just have an army of writers, if you just create content over time, you get more traffic. That's not really the case. It's really hard to rank these days unless you have a new, fresh perspective. Google has something called EEAT. Marketers or SEOs call it E or double E, and it stands for experience, expertise, authority, and trust. You need to make sure that your article offers something fresh. When I write about marketing articles, yes, some of the points in the articles may be some of the same things that other people talk about, but I'll talk about my experiences working with clients at my ad agency, NP Digital, and what clients are seeing right now or what they're not seeing, or some of the stats and the data, or some of the mistakes that I made implementing these tactics over the last 20 something years. So I'm bringing in experience and things that people won't get if they read other articles. Another example of this is, let's say you have articles related to medical treatments like cancer. Yes, you may not be a doctor, but if you're writing about how you felt when you're going through some of those treatments and little hacks to feel better or lose less hair that you found that worked for you, that may not be medically proven, but just generally like, hey, this is how I felt when I was going through chemo or whatever it may be, and this is what helped me, or this drink helped me, or whatever, that you can add that makes an article more unique. That's the kind of stuff that does really well. So if you can bring in some personalization, some storytelling, some stats and data, stuff that's unique that other people don't have, you're going to be much better off.
All right. Number 5 from my end is talking to your customers. So this seems counterintuitive, but it's an important skill to have. If you're an SEO and if you decide to ever build something for yourself in the long term, you have to talk to customers. And in this case, you have to talk to the people. Your customers are people that are consuming the content, right? So whatever strategy you're putting around that, that's one piece of it, right? But also your customers, your other stakeholders are also people within the company. So you actually have to learn, because there's so many stakeholders, you have to learn how to play political game, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. People can complain about office politics, but if you want to get things done, if you want to go far, you got to go together, right? Otherwise, you go alone. And that's fine if you're certainly it's fine if you're building like an affiliate site and all that. But that's what I've learned over the years. Like when I work within a company or within my own company, it's not like I can just tell everyone what to do, right? I have to figure out what's important to them and what their roadblocks are. Same thing for customers, same thing for internal stakeholders. You have stakeholders across the board. The more you learn about, hey, is the content actually helpful right now, or what other content are you looking for? You send a survey to your email list, you're going to be able to better calibrate. Otherwise, you're going to be building in a vacuum, and you don't want to be doing that. It's like building a product in a vacuum. That's ultimately going to fail because you're not getting constant customer feedback. So you have to build in public ideally, and you have to kind of collaborate with customers.
Number 6, trends. If you can't figure out what's trending, it's going to be really hard for you to build links. I know Google is slowly going away from links as their main factor when it comes to rankings, but it still is a huge factor. And when you think about links, the easiest way to get links is understanding trends and leveraging them. Like when COVID first came out, I started talking about how COVID is impacting marketing. That kind of stuff is trending related. That topic did really well. People started linking to it. Or, hey, there's a lot of people charging for tools. There's a big demand for free tools out there. Let me switch and release some free tools out there, and that can help me build links. Like these are all examples of leveraging trends to just generate more backlinks, which is super important in the SEO game, because sending hundreds and hundreds of manual emails or thousands is a really tough game when it comes to link building.
Number 7. So number 7, it's not going all in necessarily on AI or ChatGPT, but it's using them legit as an assistant, right? So I've seen a lot of people, they're actually pumping out a lot more content now, but they're really editorial heavy, and they have writers that are kind of looking at things. So they're making sure that they're not just letting AI do 80% of the work. So let the humans do the majority of the work and let the AIs assist. This is especially good for your, let's say, upgrading content, for example, right? And so if you're able to do that, if you're going to be able to leverage the power of AI. Also, AI can help you generate your thumbnails and things like that. You should be able to increase your output significantly, and it's going to be quality output. So just make sure you're not letting the AI go on autopilot, and then you're going to be able to scale for long term. And this goes back kind of to what Neil is talking about with trends at the end of the day. So that is it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe on YouTube or on the pod, and we will see you tomorrow.